Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Thanks so much for joining me on another episode of Learn with Flo. I really kind of threw a 180 at you guys last week, showing off another side of me and my passions that tend to only kind of come out behind the scenes in a lot of my one-on-one coaching sessions because it's a little bit more of a deep discussion, and we get a little bit more up close and personal when we start talking about the mental aspect of behavior change and limiting beliefs, and how our thoughts and our patterns really then dictate our behaviors and can dictate even just our own nervous system activation and how we experience symptoms on a daily basis. So I always tell people that if I wasn't doing and expressing my passion for the psychology through a functional nutrition approach, I would definitely be full-fledged in some sort of psychology-based field. I know it because I just have so much of a nerdy side for the brain and the behavior change side of things, and really what drives us to make decisions on a daily basis, live the way that we do, assimilate the information that we're given, and I think there's a huge unspoken part of the overall health and hormone healing and transformation journey that is so mental and very mindset driven. And I think a lot of times people tend to feel like they're stuck and feel like they're out there spinning their wheels, doing all of the right things. I hear that so frequently, how many people come to me feeling frustrated and feeling defeated and feeling dismissed because they feel like they are out there with really good information, trying to make great choices and trying to improve themselves physically and mentally and emotionally, and they're just not seeing the needle move. And a lot of times, if they're willing to dig into more of the mindset and the psychology behind things, they recognize that that really is a big parking brake for them. And more so than anything, it's a parking brake for them to be as consistent as they want to be with all of the physical work, or it really offers them the opportunity to really dive in and ask themselves, how much is their mental mindset and self-talk creating thoughts and beliefs, and how are those beliefs and those patterns physically manifesting in their body through their nervous system and their fight or flight system being activated. And it's this huge stumbling block for them to be able to overcome and achieve their health and wellness goals, regardless of whether it's weight loss or mood changes and managing their anxiety, managing their gut health and their gut symptoms, IBS, you name it. There's so many different health and hormonal imbalances that have a lot of etiology and connection to the brain down, right? So we always have to respect and at least recognize that the brain is the boss of the system. And if the boss ain't happy, then nobody's happy, right? And there's so many of those feedback loops that get sent back to the brain, and the brain gets to then dictate what happens with the rest of the body. So I think it's a little bit more out there. It's a little bit harder to conceptualize thinking about mindset and thoughts and beliefs because we can't see it, right? We can sometimes feel it in terms of some mental symptoms, like we know we have irritability, or we know we have anxiety, or we know we get moody around our menstrual cycle, or we know we're feeling depressed or just not ourselves. But a lot of times it's hard to grasp it because it's not a physical body symptom, which I think is also a big part of why our traditional healthcare system doesn't have a really great means to loop the mental side into the physical body, because we're so used to desperately grasping onto something that we can see and we can measure, and there's a lab test for it. And let's be real, this side of things, there's not a lab that's going to determine this. It's going to be something it's the deep shit, it's the inner work, and you're either willing to go there and you're then set up to be that success story, or if you're not willing to go there, I do tend to see that being a lot of people's Achilles heel when it comes to health and healing, right? And it's those people usually that aren't really willing to dig deep and do some of the mental and emotional work along with the physical work that are the people that are your chronic dieters, right? They're jumping from diet to meal plan, practitioner, and they're constantly looking for the quick fix. They're constantly looking for the thing that's going to fix all of their issues, right? And it's like, it's not going to be one thing. Stop looking for one thing. If it were one thing, we would have discovered it by now, and someone would be out there making millions of trillions of dollars. It does not exist. And that's because, one, our human experience is so different person to person. So everybody responds physically to something different. And also there's a huge interplay between the brain and the body, the physical, the mental, the emotional bodies, that we can't possibly just boil it down to one behavior change or one magic thing, right? So that's why when you tend to get more dismissed or burnt by traditional medicine or a Western medicine approach, a lot of people turn and look to things like functional medicine for some of those different answers than they're getting through a traditional medicine route, right? Where they might feel like traditional medicine doesn't have tools for them to think outside just the physical box, right? But the hard part is, and I will say this, even being probably a little bit more inclined towards the functional side of things, that there are functional practitioners out there that have no idea how to mesh the physical and the mental world. And I'm still learning this all the time, but I think there's at least, like I said, a very, very deep-seated and interweaved connection between the two in a lot of my practices, because I found time and time again how it's so limiting to someone's overall progress. I was only able to get somebody so far without digging into the deep stuff. And those people that were willing to go there with me, they continue to see progress. And those people where like I would bring that to their attention and it'd kind of halt, and I knew they weren't really ready to dig into that yet, they kind of had reached their potential that they were going to reach without really digging in. So when I think about even the functional side of things, don't get duped and think that, oh, functional is always better than traditional, because it's really not. It's sometimes out there just as much a pill for every ill. If we're testing somebody, but we're using just like fancy dancy functional medicine testing, and I'm going to put you on a laundry list of different supplements and an elimination diet and send you on your way, that's just as much working on the physical body and only working on the physical body as traditional medicine, who's doing the same exact thing with different labs and different pills. You're still doing the same thing and just approaching a physical body, but not really helping that person understand, like, what is the source of this? Where could there also be some other tools that we can loop in here if we're willing to go there, right? So I really wanted to pick up where we left off last week, because last week I started to dabble you guys into this world. Like I said, that tends to only happen behind the scenes with my one-on-one patients. And obviously I like to reserve a lot of those deeper stuff for us to dive in, but I think that there deserves a platform for you guys, whether we're working together in a one-on-one scenario or not, to be able to kind of dig into whether some of this stuff might be true for you as well. So last week we got to have an opportunity to talk about and kind of set the stage for the 7, yes, I narrowed it down to 7 somehow, the 7 common habits and mindsets of successful people. When I say successful people, I mean more in my realm of those people that do come in and end up getting great results, and they have their own success story, versus the people that come in and I feel like I take them so far and we hit this roadblock, because once we have started working on the physical, if they're not ready to really loop in the mental and the emotional work, it's like, okay, you probably reached as far as the physical work is going to take you, right? And then they're either that person that's like, okay, great, and they jump to another diet and another practitioner, or they're like, I see myself doing this song and dance again. Here I go. This time I'm going to dig in. This time I'm going to make it different, and I'm not just going to stop at the physical game. So last week we got to talk about the 7 most common characteristics of those individuals. If you missed that one, you can always go back under my reels and watch last week's as well too, because that was a good deep dive into some of those common mindsets that a lot of people have when they are ready to go there and they are ready to kind of feel their own success story. Today, I want to dig even deeper into this, what I call like mindset of success. What are some of those mindsets that individuals tend to have when it comes to being successful? And more so than anything, I call it mindset, but what's the self-talk? What is the words that we're using? What's the verbiage that we're using? How are we being very intentional about how we're approaching a hormone and healing journey through setting our goals right, setting our expectations right, getting our self-talk right, getting our thoughts and our beliefs right, really coming to terms with like, what are some things that I might need to unlearn? Like, I might need to ditch that entirely, even though I came in like holding on to that as a lifeline. And we need to be able to recognize and be able to step back and be like, that's cool. That might have served me at one time, but like, that's obviously not working anymore. I need to learn how to ditch that, right? And that's that emotional piece, that emotional maturity piece of being able to step back and see like, oh, Lauryn, now you make a good point. Now that you guide me and kind of educate me on that route, I do see that. And I think that might be a great tactic for us next, is helping me kind of like let that go so that I can pick something else up that actually does fit my picture right now. Yes, absolutely. So I'll kind of take you guys through a little bit of my spiel and thought process of individuals that are adapting a mindset of success. And I want you guys to start to pick up on some of the little nuances so that you can start to self-reflect and be like, oh, I totally do that, right? Guilty, like I'm that person. And that's okay. Self-awareness is always the first step. And then we can deliver ourselves a ton of grace and forgiveness to be like, oh, I could see where I picked that thought process up at, but I can also see where it's like, it's taken me so far and now it's holding me back from getting any further, right? So without further ado, I'm going to start to dive you guys into, first I'm going to read off a quote from another practitioner that I follow. Her name is Dr. Stacey Baker, ND. So she's a naturopathic doctor. She runs a practice called Vibe Wellness. I share her stuff all the time. But I'm just going to read this to you verbatim because I think that it has a lot of powerful punch. So she says, it turns out that health is not found in the bottom of a pill bottle or in a vial. Health is determined by the habits and the choices that we make daily, the thoughts we choose to think, the community we choose to surround ourselves with, the media we choose to expose ourselves to, the food that we eat, and the way that we allow ourselves to rest and recover. Health is not something outside of ourselves that we're missing. It is an inside job, and our bodies know what needs to be done. We just have to tune into our symptoms as our body's way of trying to communicate its needs. We need to clear out the noise, removing what shouldn't be and replacing what should be. Love that quote. I think that there's so much deepness to that because, like we said, it's an inner job, right? This is not something that you're going to seek externally. It's not that you're missing a perfect meal plan. It's like, of course, there's probably going to be some physical stuff that we need to sort out. Yes, we're going to sort out nutrition. We're going to sort out nervous system regulation. We're going to sort out lifestyle. We're going to sort out internal, external stress response. We're going to sort out sleep and alcohol and caffeine. We're going to sort out food sensitivities. We're going to sort out all of those external things. But at some point in time, like, it's not just physical. There's a whole mindset and a mental shift that needs to happen with this. And if we're constantly seeking outside sources, we're going to miss the mark every time. We're going to only get so far, and then we're going to be our own worst enemy to get any farther. So when I think about why mindset matters when it comes to healing, is probably the biggest one that we can grasp without getting too in the clouds about it, is that your physical body hears and responds to everything that your mental voices say. Right? And we hear that all the time, but I think sometimes until you actually like feel that, it's hard to really grasp it, right? So I'll kind of give you a few different examples. So first just try to check in with yourself as I say these, like, how do you feel when you hear these responses, right? Because I hear these responses all the time. So how do you hear when you feel things like, my doctor says I have prediabetes? Or how do you feel when you hear statements like, I have PCOS just like my mom and my sister do? Or hear statements that say, my body is sick and out of control, right? When I hear those types of statements, it's like, ooh, like those sound like, ooh, they kind of like make your stomach drop a little bit, right? They sound like, ooh, like I have something, like I'm wearing a label, like an identity to these types of physical body symptoms. So if I'm telling my body that, my physical brain hears everything that I'm saying. So it's like this endless loop of just like, my doctor says I have prediabetes. It sounds like so forever. It sounds like such a label. It's like, oh, that's what I have. That's who I am. That's what I'll be forever, right? And so your brain starts to hear that and it's like, oh, we do? We have prediabetes? Oh my gosh. Whoa, like this is crazy. Like news to me. Okay. And it gets us stuck in kind of that loop, right? Versus what if, and I know it sounds subtle, but what if you hear the same statements a slightly different way that actually puts our brain into a place where it accepts that that could change? That's not an absolute statement, right? It's like, instead of my doctor says I have prediabetes, what if the verbiage were something like, I need some resources to help me restore my blood sugar balance? Oh, like that's a wildly different statement of like, oh, I just need some resources to be able to restore this, right? The brain's like, oh, we can do that. Okay, let me source some resources for you. Or instead of hearing like, I have PCOS just like my mom and my sister do, you hear a statement instead that says, I want to better understand the epigenetic factors that could make my health journey different than my family, right? It's like, oh, okay, so we need to learn. There's a learning curve here where it's like, yeah, sure, I was born with these genetics, but I recognize that like how I live, how I eat, how I move, environmental exposures, like that's what's going to determine like whether I have that and express that genetic system or not, right? I want to stay open-minded and be like, wow, I've really seen my family struggle with this. And I want to understand like, what are the common epigenetic factors that all of us have that are making this manifest itself, right? I want to learn some resources to make my journey different. Wow, that just takes on a whole new mindset. Or instead of thinking my body is sick and out of my control, it's like, we start to think about and look at our symptoms as communication tools. It's like, my body is always adapting to keep me safe. My body has my back and I want to help it do that. It's like, oh, so we're getting curious about looking at the source of our symptoms versus just taking more of a mentality that I think the first statements that I gave really kind of put us a little bit more into kind of like a victim mentality, right? It's like a fixed mindset. And that mindset leads us to believe that like life is happening like to us instead of being an active participant in the outcome of the response, right? And that can be a really, really big hurdle to success when people start to kind of like attach their identity to these chronic struggles and symptoms. And they're unable to like ditch the labels of these that society puts on them. Like, I am overweight, or I am diabetic, or I am a chronic dieter. It's like, you're not that label. It's just a symptom that your body is trying to tell you like, hey, something's not aligning, something's not working between my physical body, my mental body, my emotional body. Like, we're out of alignment here and I'm having to make some drastic compensations just to keep you upright. So if you could kind of pay attention to what I'm trying to tell you and attack this from the source, let's get us back in realignment. That'd be great, right? So I think it's more just like flipping the script to feeling like, oh, I have that empowerment. I have control of a lot of those health outcomes, right? You don't have to outsource your health to a meal plan. You don't have to outsource your health to a practitioner and it's just like, fix me, right? Because they're only going to be able to offer you quick fixes, right? It's like, here's a Band-Aid, here's a cover up, right? They can't do the things that we can do for our own internal healing. So don't try to give that power to somebody else. You're not going to find it and they're definitely not going to hold it for you. You're going to have to really turn how to flip that script and like hold that power. So I truly think that we need to stop saying like, this is what you have, and start saying, this is why you have it. Right? It's like, we need to flip that a little bit and be like, oh, I need to be like a curious participant in my own health, in my own body. How can I really take that and start to listen to the body cues that my body is trying to give me into what's out of alignment, what needs to change? Then we can use things like practitioners and experts in the field to help guide us towards what that source might be, right? And that source of those is probably going to be a combination of different physical, mental, emotional factors. Not just any of those one, but we're not going to be able to bypass any of them necessarily either, right? So when you kind of think about how this is all going to fit together, I have had it explained to me through various mentors in the past of calling that behavior change or that mindset change model something called the IT factor. IIT, right? So IIT, or the IT factor, is something that I do use quite frequently to kind of determine, is somebody at that point where like the readiness for change is there? Are they willing to dig deep with me? Are they willing to look at the physical, the mental, and the emotional side of things? Or are they just here for like the physical, and they're just here expecting like a quick fix type mentality, right? So when I think of the IT factor, it stands for information, implementation, transformation, right? So when we think about the first I, is really we live in a world with a ton of information out there, let's be real. That's kind of the problem, is people are trying to outsource, right, their health to little like sound bite pieces that they get from Instagram or get from Facebook. It's like, well, this person said to drink apple cider vinegar. And I'm like, sure, like you could try that, but then they get mad that it's not a cure-all. I'm like, it's apple cider vinegar, people. I'm like, sure, it helps us stimulate our own natural digestive juices, but we have to ask the question, like, why are we struggling with that in the first place? Like, how are we going to, sure, we can use apple cider vinegar as a little bit of a Band-Aid right now, but like, what are we doing to fix the root of the problem so that you create your own natural digestive juices, which is the first line of defense for your immune system, protects you against overgrowths, food sensitivities, leaky gut, and autoimmune patterns? It's like, yeah, let's ask that bigger question. That sounds a lot better than just like these little soundbite, I'm going to try to just Band-Aid and fix myself, right? So we live in a world where information is at your fingertips, but what's the right information for you, right? And so we need to be able to be open to what that right information is, but we also need to be able to block out the rest of that confidently. Right. So that's where I think the information stage, I'm able to really discern, like, does someone have this IT factor? If they're coming in and really asking themselves like, hey, I'm a clean slate, like, help me divulge out, like, what is the right information for me, right? Versus coming in desperately married to something and it's not working for you. It's really, really hard to kind of break that vice grip. I would say, maybe one of the other common examples I can give is women that come in and they're like super married to like calories and like calorie counting, calories in, calories out. They like have this like eat less, move more mindset. And it's very apparent that that strategy is not working for them anymore, but they can't ditch it. And so they can't move forward. And so even if they come in and they're like, yeah, Lauryn, I'll make changes. I'll do what you asked me to. And I ask them to start like taking what they were doing and like add something to it, add something to a meal, do this a little differently. They're like, well, isn't that adding calories? I'm like, yeah, I'm fully aware that I'm asking you to add calories to that meal. Is that a problem? And they're like, oh yeah, but you do realize I want to like lose weight, right? I'm like, yes, we're on the same page with that, right? I'm trying to guide you towards that, right? But they can't get out of their own way. They can't possibly fathom allowing themselves to add something to a meal and ditch the fact that like calories and calorie counting is not a tool for them right now. It's not working for them. It's not the right information. Right? It's like, so someone that comes in like married to a piece of information and cannot like unlearn it or let it go, that's somebody that's not really in the right mindset. They're just looking for somebody to tell them that whatever they're doing is right. We get those people all the time, right? They want someone to come in and be like, they just want to hear, you're doing everything right. There's nothing we can change. Like, your body is just broken. Like, they're looking for someone to kind of like reaffirm that. And I'm sorry, but I'm not here for that. Like, that's not going to get anybody anywhere if we're not willing to come to the table and be like, hey, I got shit, you got shit, none of us are perfect. Like, do you want to make some shifts? Want to make some changes? Maybe feel a little bit better? Okay, cool, right? Let's really get the right information for you so that you can start implementing that information confidently and actually seeing and feeling better, right? So part one of that it factor, someone has it or they don't, is are they willing to grasp like an information switch or like unlearning certain information? Now, the second I in the it factor is the implementation, right? So a lot of people, like I said, kind of maybe have a lot of the right information, but they can't consistently implement it into their own reality, right? And so they kind of need the right systems, because let's be real, habit change is hard. It's a combination though of like physical and mental factors to help them figure out how to overcome the limiting beliefs that are holding them back from being consistent with that. A lot of this kind of plays back into like an all or nothing mentality around like, I'm either perfect on my plan or I'm YOLO and I'm off the rails, because they feel just like so restricted. Other people are trying to follow something that honestly just does not fall into their day-to-day life. They're like, I'm a mom of 4 kids, I work outside the home, and I'm caring for my aging mother, and I'm trying to count calories, count macros, weigh, measure my protein, and meal prep everything inside the home. I'm like, how is that working for you, right? That seems out of alignment, right? So even if like you had the perfect meal plan or you had the right amount of calories and macros for your body, you can't consistently implement it because it doesn't fit. Like, you're going to need a different strategy that you can be more consistent with, because really what you can do consistently is probably going to work a hell of a lot better than something you can't do consistently, right? But getting them to like mentally be okay with ditching that and finding the messy middle can be really, really difficult for certain implementation strategies, right? And then the last factor of that it factor is the T, which is the transformation, right? And this one is usually when you have the right information that you can implement consistently, now you're going to see that lifestyle transformation occur, right? But it's just getting people into the right mindset for success and overcoming some of their thoughts and their limiting beliefs and their self-talk that's kind of holding them back from being able to identify the right information or the right implementation to really see the transformation. And honestly, too, some people even hold themselves back from the transformation piece because it's easier to stay where they're at because it's familiar and it's known. Even if they like physically want to see and feel better, they become wrapped up in the identity of being like chronically ill, or they wrap themselves up in the identity of like being an anxious person, and then when they're not anxious, like they're anxious because they're not anxious, or they're like bored, you know? So it's like a lot of us hold ourselves back from that transformation piece too, because it's more, it feels more comfortable to stay in the known, even if the known is sick or the known isn't really serving us very well. So when I think about overall, just high level, the mindset of success that I want you guys to think about is starting to like self-reflect on where you might be in this overall journey, right? Are you someone right now that is holding yourself back with more of an all or nothing mentality because you can't quite ditch the diet culture dogma out there of like just looking at the physical body? Are you somebody out there that is hard, you're finding it hard to connect to anything that's like a success marker that's not the scale, right? It's like you don't have anything, if it's not weight loss, then it's like that's somebody that's just looking at the physical body, right? And quite frankly, a really, really shitty way of looking at the physical body, let's be real. But it's like, if we don't have any metrics of success, that's not the scale or a body comp, like, what are we doing? Like, what are we measuring and looking at for like mental, emotional, energetic, physical health? Like all of those have to play a part. Reflecting on the fact, like, are you keeping yourself stuck because of the best possible outcome isn't something that you can even fathom, right? You're like, well, I've never been there before, so I can't possibly achieve it, but I'll keep signing up for these things, looking for the external clue, knowing that it's going to be unrealistic and I'll just get to quit. Right? It's like, are we knowingly self-sabotaging and putting ourselves in those situations where we're just like wanting to stay where it's comfortable and not being able to branch out into those things as well too. So maybe you're also that person where you can ask yourself the question, you're like, am I looking to outsource? Am I constantly that chronic dieter jumping from diet to diet, practitioner, lab test to lab test, like looking for something wrong, but not getting like the validation or finding that quick fix and refusing to look deeper, right? Refusing to look at the big picture. So I think overall, that's where I want you guys to start to think, oh, okay, so this chick definitely talks mental. She definitely talks the physical side of things. She talks hormones and blood sugar and thyroid and gut health, but it's like, there's a whole nother mental and emotional side to this that's also behind the scenes as well too. And it's just as valuable of information as anything else, right? So when you guys are thinking about your overall health and wellness goals, don't discount the mental side of the game too. And hopefully you were able to jot down a few of those journal prompts along the way. Take some time to really think about those things. If it's helpful for you, put some pen to paper around the thoughts of where you feel like the mental and the emotional piece has been your stumbling block because you've just been focusing on the physical, like what do I eat? When do I eat? How do I sleep? What are these biohacking tools? What supplements do I take? What peptides can I get on? What lab tests can I do? It's like at some point in time, all of those physical things are great, but they're only going to take you as far as your mental and your emotional game will. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys. If you're interested in combining more of that, like I said, the physical and the mental, or if you feel like you have had trouble finding the right information and implementation strategy to really get to that transformation, all of this and more is exactly what I dive into in my one-on-one Revive, Restore, Renew You program. So if you're interested in that, head to the link in my bio. There's an application link there. You can fill that out and we can get you started on your own transformation journey today, encompassing both aspects of that physical and that mental health as well too. So hopefully that was helpful for you guys. Join in next Monday as we tackle another concept of our Learn with Flow, and have a great week.